Good morning, everybody. Again from Silicon Valley, we have another Minded Chat. Today, we have the pleasure of talking about the future of food packaging and related with by far one of the premium provider in the industry, Nestlé. And we have the pleasure to have here with us Goran Kukic. Goran, how you doing?
Hello, hi Marco, pleasure to be here. Also here back from San Francisco, where I'm based out of our innovation outpost, supporting IT innovation and business innovation with new technology trends.
But it's great to see that you actually can make it to the office, because I see an office building in the back. Are you by the bay?
This is not a fake background. We actually do occasionally 2 or 3 times a day come to the office, yes.
Yeah, in the ups and downs of San Francisco was great up until a couple of weeks ago, last week, and then now we're again in tough times and tough waters. But we'll go through it.
These 2 days that I come, it's a very sad picture with barricades and empty bars and empty streets, and finding a place to eat during lunch is not even for takeout. It's not obvious. So.
Yeah. Oh, well. Listen, Goran, so it's a pleasure to have you here. First of all, congratulations to Nestlé and the company you represent for being one of the companies that have been awarded the Corporate Startup Stars. And that's also the framework under which we are doing these interviews, is sharing really best practices in your open innovation activities. And I know that you have many. We just said, not just, but a few months ago, where one of your team members, Nick de Blasio, talking about InGenius is one of the most visible programs that you guys run. But this is the opportunity to talk about also the other programs, a little bit more of a wider range of activities that you guys take on when talking about open innovation. So we'll do it under this framework. Why don't we start a little bit more about your role, first of all, within the galaxy of Nestlé, and then how you got there. I know that you've been working for Nestlé for quite a few months.
Oh, months. We stopped counting months. No, but first of all, thank you very much for the reward. I'm very happy and honored, and I think it's a great recognition of what we've been doing in the open innovation space, and I will touch on InGenius and the other platforms that we have. On my background, so I've been with Nestlé close to 19 years. I started my career in R&D. I'm an engineer by training. I have an electrical engineering bachelor degree and a master in computer science. I started as a programmer. I've been a project manager. I've managed all the ISIT for the R&D organization, and then moved into more specific innovation roles. So today, I'm part of the Nestlé Global IT Leadership. I report into the CIO, and I'm looking after all the innovations, technology-driven innovations that are impacting Nestlé brands, Nestlé markets, Nestlé factories. So both from what is visible to the consumer, but also on the inside and enterprise.
Hey, Goran, where did you grow up? Because as many of us here in Silicon Valley, you are from somewhere else, right?
Yes.
So, I think your last name as mine would tell, but give us a little bit of it.
I think that name is telling. So I'm originally Croatian. So all of my degrees are from University of Zagreb. I've spent 15 years of my career in Switzerland. So I do speak French. My kid speaks French, and he still considers himself. He doesn't know actually what he is. And last 5 years, I've been based out of Silicon Valley. I was sent here by Nestlé to open the innovation outpost from the technology side, and I've never left. I fell in love in Silicon Valley. I fell in love in having a chance meeting so many people and seeing people's passion about innovation, seeing people's drive and willingness to sacrifice everything to either change the world or make money or make a name for themselves. Doesn't matter, but it's there's not many places in the world where you systematically have to be on your toes, because you are most probably not you are most definitely not the smartest person in the room.
That's the one thing that is given. Yes, I had the same exact experience, and many of us here. Just that it started in 2001 when I landed here temporarily. I'm still temporarily, here 20 years later. But and the world has changed.
I changed my temporary.
Yeah, I know. It's just mental. Yeah, I've been dual citizen for quite some time, and obviously everything is related to this land now. All right, so a couple of words. Nestlé obviously doesn't need an introduction. I'll give just some numbers, but just for the sheer numbers, you get the size: 90 billion in sales plus 240,000 employees. R&D investment, $1.7 billion. Actually, I was hearing a statistic that I think is pretty telling. You're serving at least 1 billion servings a day to people around the world of any of your products. So that gives really the size of the importance of what you guys have been doing for the last 140 years maybe. So very, very intriguing. How many brands does Nestlé has under the umbrella? Yeah, I don't know if you even count them.
No, we do, but it's I think it also says 2,000 plus. I think that there is the number that is counted more closely is the number of billion brands, so the brands that are having more than $1 billion in revenue, and those are I believe just under 20. So it's a really big company. I believe we are present in almost every market in the world, and exactly as you say, we do sell above 1 billion products a day, and those numbers are very impressive.
So largest food company in the world by revenue.
By far.
Obviously, by large. When do you think, you've been with Nestlé quite some time. When do you think that the first structure focus on open innovation gets started in the years that you've been there?
Yes. So, first of all, I need to explain and make a difference. I feel that I need to clarify that Nestlé is obviously a food and beverage company. So, as you just mentioned, they invest in an R&D organization. They invest in coming up with better foods and better beverages that are either healthier or serving certain functional need for our consumers, or making it better or easier to produce, or in more sustainable packaging. That is the core of what our company does. With the number of R&D centers that we have, with investment, with the number of food scientists and researchers and nutritionists that we have, I think that Nestlé has an unmatched power in that space. I am driving innovation on the technology side. Technology side is coming down on the IT vertical. And that notion of open innovation always existed within the R&D organization, and it then came much later in the technology perspective. So as far as I remember, Nestlé had some kind of open innovation platform on the R&D side, through collaboration with the universities, through collaboration with the outside researchers. The technology side, startups, that came much later. And I like to explain that there was at one point in time, there was a big shift where if you wanted to be in the heart of innovation, you were going after the universities, and then that switched. And now if you want to be in the heart of innovation, you're going after VCs and startups. And that is a slight change. So for us, we started probably 5 years ago in the technology space, where we adopted the mantra of bringing the technology outside in, and really started looking outside and understanding that partnering with somebody, finding a company, finding a startup, finding an established technology partner that is working on a problem that we might have, partnering with them instead of trying to invent the wheel by ourselves internally, brings significant gains in time and efficiency and route to market.
In terms of structure, very complicated. You mentioned it. I assume the R&D is a big chunk of it. You reported to CIO. Does the R&D has a different reporting?
Oh, absolutely. R&D is reporting into the CTO, so the Chief Technology Officer. He's running the R&D, and he sits in the executive board. I'm not under that vertical. CIO sits under the vertical that is under HR and other business services. So where IT is the biggest chunk, but IT is still today seen a bit separate from food and beverage innovation.
And obviously one of the key points here, and we're going to go a little bit more in details on some of the programs that you run, but this link, this dotted line between what you guys are doing and the R&D, that is always easier said than done in practicality. But
we solved it. We solved it in an interesting way, and you're pushing me to expand on my role. So internally, my formal title would be head of IT innovation and R&D stream, which people just assume that an R&D means innovation and R&D go hand in hand. Well, actually, no, those are two very separate hats. So I'm responsible for IT innovation and I'm responsible for R&D stream. So I'm actually supporting the entire R&D organization from the ISIT perspective. So my team across the geographies is actually supporting that R&D organization. So that's why I said, like, we're supporting two sets of stakeholders, but I'm basically running transversally an IT innovation organization where we look into how do you go from trends and strategy and ideation, prioritization, building concepts, piloting, measuring the success of those pilots, and then industrialization, which would be totally transversal. And I manage an R&D vertical as a IT product organization, where we support the R&D organization, where we basically make sure that they have all the tools and everything they need from the technology perspective to do their job. And that's why what I'm going to talk about, like R&D Accelerator, is one of our flagships in open innovation today, is actually from the technology perspective supported 100% by my team.
Perfect. I think that's a perfect segue. So let's talk about the different programs that report to you. So you talked about InGenius, and probably we're going to go just the highlights in terms of how you divide intrapreneurship versus the innovation that comes from outside, the R&D Accelerator, the Mass Challenge, and also your Open Challenge platform. I think those are those four main pillars. So why don't we describe one by one?
Sure. So I'll start with InGenius because that's probably the one that's closest to my heart, and that is the one that is run 100% by my team, by Nick de Blasio, who's been driving this program for many years now. And it is definitely 100% his baby. So this is for us the employee-driven innovation. This is for us a platform where we believe that anybody within the company can come up with a good idea, and we need to give them a mechanism where we can flush that idea and bring it up to the proper structures to decide, do we want to test, do we want to invest, do we want to entertain this idea further, and bring that to a point where we can generate enough data to say, yes, we need to industrialize this, or no, we don't need to industrialize this. So the InGenius as a platform, we run it as a open standing challenge for certain functions, and we run it as a focused driven innovation challenges around specific topic for a limited period of time in others. But the key point is that anybody can submit idea, and then there's a crowdsourcing mechanism that would allow other people to comment and build on top of that idea in order to make it better. And then at the end, we would look into we would present that to the management team and ensure funding for them. And whatever gets funded, we would then help them bring that to a proper concept so it can be tested.
I think there we got pretty much in details a few months ago with Nick, but maybe to prepare some of the following questions that I might have, how do you connect the dots between the different programs that you might have in practice? When do you decide areas where intrapreneurship is makes sense to focus? You also get inputs from your perception of what comes out of some of your other programs that you have, the Mass Challenge or the R&D Acceleration. What I'm trying to say is that do you do a top-down design, or what are the macro areas that maybe time difference you will address?
The process is defined in the same way. So the process on how do we go from end-to-end innovation is very similar. So where does the idea come from, and how we drive it through the innovation funnel stays very, very similar. The difference might be only from where the idea is coming from. So for me, we can equally foster the ideas no matter where they come from, but the intention might be a bit different. R&D Accelerator for me, which is first of all, it's an R&D accelerator, so the output of that would exclusively be food or beverage. But in today's world, there are strong technological components that you have to support them with, from a website to an e-commerce platform, through understanding them what the trends are, to help them understand what's their freedom to operate from the patent perspective, and so on. And then also giving them some kind of tools to help them innovate faster. But that is a mix of teams that you have inside. So you can have Nestlé employees who have an idea and want to have a box 6 months team-driven, cohort-focused event to do this, or it can be an external teams coming from the universities. We had few use cases where we brought them here from Berkeley and sent them to Switzerland into the accelerator, or the other ones that would be startups that are just starting, basically really acting as an accelerator. But the objective of that would be significantly different, right? The third one would be Henri platform, which is our platform where we publish our challenges, where we're looking the help from others, but then those challenges that get posted on that would typically have a component of creating shared value, of some kind of social responsibility. They would go beyond of somebody outside trying to help Nestlé solve a problem. Those would be challenges linked to packaging. There would be challenges linked to water consumption. There would be an element of greater good. But also the expectations for us is that we solve the problems there. So would that be a young startup, or that would be an established company, or somebody else applying to Henri would probably be significantly different, because you wouldn't have SAP applying to R&D Accelerator to do something with us. That's a bit different. So I think that's where the delineation goes. The common thread there, underlyingly, it's R&D organization, and it's us as innovation and R&D organization supporting them.
Great. So InGenius, obviously the Intrapreneurship platform. Then there is the R&D Accelerator that you kind of mentioned. Maybe a little bit of insights of how you structure the R&D Accelerator. What's the outcome? Maybe some success stories of what you count as a success story internally as a KPI.
Yes. So this is as I said, my team has been supporting them from a technology perspective. I'm not trying to take the credit for anybody. This is 100% R&D construct, and as I said, it is focused on food and beverage. So the ideal outcome would be a new product launched onto the shelf. So the way it's working is that entrepreneurs, either coming from the company or from the outside, will have a great idea around around the product. We had an example of a company that came up with a functional water water that had special properties that would help hydration, but they couldn't figure out the safety. They could not figure out the quality. They couldn't figure out the nutritional composition of why that water is working that well. So they would become part of the accelerator. They would understand what everything that they need to know from the food safety perspective, and then help them package that, prepare the brand, and then launch that into one of the Nestlé shops to see how that works. So the success story would be Nestlé continuing that line and continuing to sell that across the globe.
How do you source those companies' ideas or R&D projects for the R&D Accelerator? Do you have scouts that are out and around, or you expect more? There's
a person who is responsible for that program. His name is Tom Wagner, and it is principally his and his team responsibility on how they pick and who do they let into the accelerator. That said, we are all trying to help them find candidates. So there's been, as I said, we brought few people from the Berkeley University, leveraging the fact that we're here. We also, Nestlé is trying to launch, and we had a few hiccups with the pandemic, what is called Swiss Food Valley, and we've spent a lot of time advertising about that. And there was supposed to be a huge campaign during 2020 where we would make known that in collaboration with Nestlé and Canton de Vaud and École Hôtelière Suisse, and I'm forgetting somebody, but that we as partners create Swiss Food Valley, and then through that have a systematic partnership with through Swiss government, through Swiss brand, and then try to attract startups to come over into.
Would that be a separate line of the accelerator, or
that will still be part of the R&D organization, and the end goal will still be to bring those into the R&D accelerator, right?
At what stage are those projects? I mean, obviously, for what you guys are doing, probably the IP is probably the most interesting part. For the most part, I would assume. So, the research.
The stage of the product is really going from. I believe that everybody who comes in has the first prototype, and the objective is to have a product on the shelf. So, those are the end goal would be limited production in order to have that on the shelf.
Again, I don't know if you can share numbers, but how do you budget these activities within your group? So, for example, if you were to budget, your full budget for the R&D accelerator, how would you?
I mean, the number I would give you for the R&D accelerator would make sense, because I would talk about about IT numbers. So the R&D budget for R&D accelerator, I do not know. The way I budget and prepare the financials for supporting the IT organization is a centralized budget. I'm a strong believer that if you're trying to support the business, and business typically has very short-term objectives. So they have their own P&L, they have their objectives around sales, and that they have to meet every year and bring in the money and achieve their profit targets. It is very difficult for them to dedicate money or to dedicate time into innovation activities that are not directly supporting that. So if you want to drive innovation, if you think about innovation not simply as a tactical solutions for basically Horizon 1, solving some immediate efficiency, as you start thinking about Horizon 2 or Horizon 3, you need to de-risk those activities for the markets. And the only way that you can de-risk those activities for the markets is by having centralized team and centralized budget, so you can finance those early grains of innovation before you can build the business case and generate enough data to say, there is a proper business case, there is a chance for this to make money, why don't you invest on this by yourself?
And so that's a shared budget at the end of the day between you, but also especially on the R&D side. Yeah. Give us some numbers on the accelerators, how many projects you see, how many actually go through a more formalized project, the process, and how many eventually then you expect as an internal target to turn into, real integration or whatever that can come out of there.
Again, R&D Accelerator is, I believe, now coming into the fourth cohort, and they've been having between 5 and 7 teams in each cohort. But then again, those are not my KPIs. My KPIs were on the number of projects that have a potential to reach of 10 million in net sales. And our objective for the last 4 years have been systematically to get 6 projects with that potential.
Oh, wow.
So that was the KPI that we were.
That's pretty aggressive. Can you give us 1 or 2 examples of something that you can share of such projects?
Sure, I can. There is so one of the trends that we look after and we think is very important is around personalized nutrition. And in personalized nutrition, there's you can think about personalization in many ways. You can think about personalization of purely technology perspective, saying like, oh, well, I'm personalizing the ads, or I'm personalizing the newsletters I'm sending to my community. But you can also think about personalization significantly more mature. You can think about personalization of recipes to meet your preferences. You can think about personalization of recipes on our recipe platforms to tell you, hey, you can substitute this ingredient with this ingredient to meet whatever functional need that you might have, being recovery or gut comfort or better sleep or whatever that would be. But then you can go further and say, hey, I can do personalized meal plans. I can do personalized nutritional coaching to help you achieve your goals and to stick to your goals. And then go further into saying, I'm going to go into manufacturing of food products that would be personalized in the way that I just described to meet some of the functional needs. But for that, you need small batch manufacturing, you need micro warehousing, you need different supply chains, you need robots, you need this a lot. Okay, so all of that's coming. But the project we just launched is called Within. And it's called the website is startwithin.com, and it's a personalized nutritional coaching platform where we help people to achieve their health goals by giving them recommendations and then following them up with nutritionists to help them achieve those goals.
That's excellent. So that's a pure B2C play.
That's
right?
a pure B2C play with the intention of measuring how much of the additional revenue, how can you open a new revenue stream that is going beyond food and beverage in order for you to bring money into the company.
In that case, also to close the cycle of the role of the R&D Accelerator there, at what stage was the project when you saw it, and what is the current status? Is that a partnership, an acquisition, or something?
This project was purely digital, so this project did not go through R&D Accelerator. So this part was done obviously in collaboration with the R&D organization, because all the nutritional knowledge and nutritional algorithms and all of that would come from R&D organization. But this project did not go through the R&D.
Got it.
I do not manage their portfolio. I manage the technology-driven portfolio, not the R&D one.
Got it. And maybe a couple of words about where you talked about the Henri. Henri, by the way, is the name of the founder, Henri Nestlé. That's the Mr. Founder. When did that start? And what are kind of today's the kind of project that go through that?
Sure. So Nestlé, Henri at Nestlé is absolutely the name came from the Henri Nestlé, who was the founder of the company, and we thought that he is the ultimate innovator in the company, because he was the first one who figured out how to create the first infant formula and help mothers who were not able to feed their babies. So inspired by that, we created the Henri at Nestlé platform. And as I said, that was really for us initially a new channel where we can leverage external ecosystem to solve the problems or challenge that we might have internally. And over time, that really evolved into looking into what are really those socioeconomic value-driven projects where Nestlé believes can make an impact. And some of the projects that we worked on were really around plastic elimination. They were around water reduction. They were around recycling and so on. So a lot of that was driven by our commitments driven to food waste, our commitments driven to sustainability, and so on. So that was kind of the change that the project took over years, going away from what we initially thought that would just be another channel for us to tap into the external ecosystem and bring the information in.
The topic of sustainability, I'm sure, is becoming more and more central to everything that you do. How do you interpret that within all your programs? Is that you have a separate unit that is fully focused internally on the measurement and the direction of how you implement sustainable programs, or is that something that is fully embedded in every business unit?
So Nestlé made the global commitments around sustainability, around food waste, around packaging and recycling. So from the IT perspective, we do have a person who is responsible for IT sustainability, who is also part of the IT leadership team. So we are streamlining all the portfolio that is touching on those projects under the leadership of that person. That person is not having a specific dedicated team to drive those projects, but that is a consolidation of the portfolio and really a strategic guidance function to help everybody else work on sustainability and in order to support those global commitments that Nestlé has made. Same thing applies for my team. So here out of San Francisco, we have plastics and sustainability as a strategic pillar We have a person who is dedicated for that. And when we look into the innovation where technology can help in the consumer-driven applications to address any of those topics, we would work in collaboration with the head of IT sustainability to make sure that that meets the bigger objectives and bigger agendas.
Do you also have hard KPIs within the framework of sustainability that I'm sure the company has, but I wonder if that trickles down also in the different units and subunits?
No, I mean, yes, they do, but they would most typically trickle down into the manufacturing and supply chain and sales and the other, where those KPIs can be translated into concrete reduction targets. For us, the targets are not specific to sustainability. For me, a sustainability project is obviously I would strive to have a healthy innovation portfolio where I would have a good split between my strategic pillars and a good split between Horizon 1, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3, making sure that innovation portfolio is balanced. But I wouldn't have a target that would say I need to launch an innovation project with an objective of reduction of this many tons.
Or any of the SDGs in details. Great. I think, again, a good connection to then the other thing that you guys support, that is a mass challenge. So maybe some words about that.
Yes. So Mass Challenge, Nestlé is a partner of Mass Challenge in Switzerland, and we have been working with them for now close to 5 years. Initially, we helped them find and filter the startups that are around food and beverage. So we provided a number of mentors that are on the R&D side, which were all basically being food scientists. And proximity of the Swiss Mass Challenge that is not far away from Lausanne, where most of our R&D centers are located, it helped us to provide that steady knowledge coming from our scientists to help them source and mentor startups within. I got involved probably 3 years ago, where we saw an opportunity that Mass Challenge is also having a number of startups that are on the technology side. So I actually organized and brought the IT leadership into the Mass Challenge, where we made the first connection and saw that there is actually a number of companies that are having heavy technological components that where us as members of the IT leadership team can support them and help them with our knowledge on finance, on supply chain, on R&D, on technology. So we basically started pushing, and now it's a part of all the IT leadership team objectives to help and support and mentor startups. And we picked Mass Challenge as a vehicle for that. So I've been mentoring startups in Mass Challenge as of last year as well.
Perfect. Yeah, actually, I think I visited last year. Last time I was in Lausanne. It's fantastic. Also, all the areas and the integration that you guys have with the local ecosystems there. With all these activities and all these projects running in parallel, I mean, I'm curious, how do you track all of that? So I assume that each of such areas have different tools to manage the day by day. The InGenius probably has its own tools, but I wonder, really, from a tracking perspective, in terms of tools, is there something that gives you a full dashboard of all your innovation mix that you have under control?
Sure. So I do use a tool. I have a tool that's called Startup Flow that I've been using for some time, and that's where we track all the contacts with startups and the initial innovation projects. So this is for us precursor of our idea to launch system, which is a more robust, budgeting, prioritization, stage gate driven innovation process. But for me, that kicks in only when you already have the full business case with the concrete objectives that you have to achieve. Where we position startup flow is across all functions to say, okay, I've been looking into this startup, I've been looking into this area, and this is the project that I've been launching. So here you can see, are we in the ideation phase? Are we in the concept development phase? Are we in the piloting phase? Or are we already pushing towards the industrialization, which would then be an overlap with our I2L system. So startup flow is our place to go, and prioritization and improvement of the budget would be per function. So we would look into, for each of the functions, for them to help us prioritize where do they want us to focus our efforts. And as I said, as I mentioned previously, for me, the most important thing is that as long as your innovation portfolio is balanced, as long as you have a good split between horizons and you're not exclusively working on tactical solutions, and you are not having only one moonshot project, which will probably not come to fruition for the next 5 years, you're good. So as long as you have that balance per function, that is okay for me.
Are those tools that you have developed internally, or
no,
those are off the
Flow
shelf?
is an external company. You can check them up. They are a French company, and there's quite a few companies using it.
Yeah, great publicity here.
I had to. You asked for it.
Great. No, excellent. That's we need to have practical inputs, and that's definitely one of them. Just to conclude, just a look at the future, and under your umbrella, you see a lot of macro trends, and so maybe pick one between the future of food, or sustainability or packaging, that you think is going to be very big, that you also personally relate to, that you think is going to change part of the business you're in.
The number. I'll talk about two trends, and they're going to come together. So for me, one of the biggest trends that we see today is really around personalized nutrition. I think that people are becoming more and more conscious about their health, and they're becoming more conscious about what they eat, and generally becoming more conscious about their health. And out of that, and the human's willingness to eat better, there's a number of technological components that have to come together for us to achieve that. So there's a big drive around wearables. People are trying that notion of quantified self that we thought peaked probably 3 years ago. I think it's coming back. I see a big return on wearables. I see more and more people trying to track and understand what's happening with their body, and based on that, target their nutrition, aim to what they eat, how they eat, and really being more mindful about what they do. And I think that there's a big play there on how do you match their willingness to do with the second biggest trend, which is convenience. So I know that those two kind of feel as if they're contradicting themselves, but before the pandemic in 2019, convenience was the biggest driver, for the first time ever, a biggest driver for people to choose which food they would eat. In 2019, it was an interesting research, because until then the number one driver was taste and quality of food. So people's cravings and what you're in the mood for was for the first time overtaken by, I'm going to eat something convenient. Mm-hmm. And now we see that shift, how that blends into the pandemic era, where now people are going back to, I really do care what I eat, and I'm going to make an effort. I'm going to have a wearable, and then I'm going to have either the food delivered, or I'm going to have somebody explain to me how to cook this, or I'm going to have a personalized recipe. And it goes all the way into the IoT, where kitchens are becoming more and more connected, where now execution of that recipe to that perfection to meet my needs will be done by this connected oven, connected stovetop, connected fridge, and so on.
Well, I mean, it sounds very real, very exciting, and very timely, I have to say.
We're living it.
Yes. So with that, I think, Goran, appreciate your inputs and your time. Again, congratulations on your award, and keep up with a good work. So hopefully see you soon.
Marco, still again, thank you one more time for attributing this award to us. We're very humbled and proud, and all the recognition goes to the team. So a pleasure talking to you.
Very good. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.